Hi, guys. It's what we do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RT Snyder Cut YouTube channel. This is the Ayer Cut Roundtable, and today we've got three amazing guests from the movement. We have first, let's welcome Tim from Magic Ninjaka. How are you, Tim?
Pleased to be here. Thank you for having me. Excited to talk some Ayer Cut.
Yes, excited to get right into it. And also, we've got Mel Siggy. Melissa, thank you for joining us.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
And finally, we've got on Twitter also at Retro Grave Prod. We've got Steve Kassan. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited to talk about this movie that we worked on. I want to see it.
You still haven't seen it, right?
I saw half of it. We also half of it, so I want to see the rest of it. But yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, we've been waiting since Comic-Con, that amazing first trailer. We're waiting and we're working to try to get everyone to release the Ayer Cut, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and really go through what the Ayer Cut is, what it means for us, how different it is, and really talk all things Ayer Cut today. So first, let's start off with Tim. What is the Ayer Cut to you?
In the simplest terms, it is not just the director's cut, but David's actual film vision that he intended for us, the audience, to see, until it wasn't.
Right, exactly. And Melissa, what is the Ayer Cut to you?
The words out of my mouth. Definitely David's vision, the way he created the movie, the way he thought it would be, the way it should be, the story that he told.
Yeah, justice for the filmmakers, of course. And Steve, What is the Ayer Cut?
What is the Ayer Cut to me? Well, it's the movie that we worked hard on. I spent 3 long days. The peers there doing I've talked about it before. I was a background infantry on the aftermath of the Midway attack, but also I had a lot of friends who were crew who worked on set. A lot of long hours, a lot of friends who also worked as stunts and also as actors, because when you come to a place, you hire local to fill everything out. And being on set, working on day, when you heard Victor Cruz talk about him going down with a slate and how 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., Deborah Snyder said, oh, that's a half day. That's true. It's working on set, making a movie, it's hard work. So the Ayer Cut to me is all the hard work we put in. And whenever you put hard work into something, well, you want to see your hard work finished, right? Isn't that the idea? So that's what the Ayer Cut is to me. At least let's see the work we put in.
Awesome. So some personal perspectives from all three of you. We're going to go into specifics on what the difference is between the theatrical cut and the Ayer Cut, so that people can see how it truly is a different movie, very much how like we saw with the Snyder Cut a couple of months back, and how it really was a lot different than what we got in Justice League. But first, we had Steve, you wanted to talk about some of the differences in between what happened with the Ayer Cut and the Snyder Cut. Yeah, you had brought up some examples, which I do want you to bring up some comparisons. But first, we're going to talk. I want to hear from Melissa on what you think is the difference as to what happened between the Ayer Cut and the Snyder Cut.
Even though there were different circumstances, they both were rightfully deserved to have their narratives told the way that the directors, originated them. And I think the difference is there was a personal tragedy with the Snyder Cut, but then also with the Ayer Cut, I think regardless of there not being a personal tragedy, nonetheless, there was still major interference to the point where it was a completely different movie than he spent his life and career creating. So in his time, and the crew and all the characters, and the narrative was different. So I think that we need to hear the proper story arc, and all the characters need to have their stories told. Like there was a significant amount of time and scenes cut.
Tons of that. Absolutely. and a lot of studio interference, especially when it came to what David wanted to plan and what he planned with Zach and the rest of the production team, especially. So let's talk to someone who was on set as well. Steve, how's this different compared to, you brought up some examples like Blade Runner, The Abyss that you wanted to cover, and where the Ayer Cut fits in that line of different cuts?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have to make the clear distinction of what happened, as Melissa said, what happened with Ayer compared to what happened with Snyder. It's a totally different circumstance, because what happened with Snyder, what made us all want to band together and fight for Zach and fight for his film, is because the tragedy at hand. We cannot, because that's the main aspect of release the Snyder Cut, because there was a personal tragedy and there was, his family was taken advantage of, right?
Yeah.
That's no secret. Now, what happened to Ayer? Well, we were talking before about what to present with this roundtable. Unfortunately, that happens, and it's happened to Ayer. It's happened to everyone. It's happened to me, even on a smaller indie scale. It happened to me in one of my projects that I was on, where we all thought we were making something good, but then we send it out to a couple of friends to look, and it's like, this is a bit too much. Like, you want people to watch this, right? I'm like, yeah, we do, but you got to make some changes here. And that's what happens. That's why you have test screenings and everything. Sometimes it's like, oh, why do we have to do this? Because, you're presenting an assembly cut to a test screening and not having the full thing done. And you're getting notes from people who maybe don't want to be there that day. Maybe they're not even the right audience or demographic of it. And you're getting their notes. It's like, oh, we got this notes from a test screening. We got to make changes. But sometimes those changes work. Sometimes you get notes from executives and they make sense. Not all the time, mind you, not all the time. But because you got to trust your filmmakers. But sometimes your filmmakers, they get too caught up, and, maybe they need an outside perspective, right? Sometimes we do need outside perspectives and whenever you create something, because an outside perspective might give you better ideas that, oh, I never thought of that before. Maybe, like if Tim's drawing something and it's like, what do you think of this? Like, maybe you should do this. And like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. Or you might say, no, go screw yourself. I know what I'm doing. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So going back, running it down, back to David Ayer, it happens, And let's say one example is Rogue One, where there were reshoots done by a different director, and that turned out great. Everyone seems to think Rogue One is like the best new Star Wars film out of the new bunch. So sometimes it works. And at the end of the day, with David's film, it's not as serious as his other films. Now, I've talked about this in other podcasts before, where if you look at David, and my first time talking about this, I always thought Suicide Squad, David's true intent of Suicide Squad, you can look at two of his films, Fury and Sabotage. And even in all his films, he deals with very gritty characters. He deals with very messed up characters. And Suicide Squad, the end result is quite it deviates from his style. Training Day, Street Kings, Harsh Times, all his films have very rough and gritty characters, and it's not pleasant. And you can see moments of that in the theatrical cut of Suicide Squad, especially the bar scene. That's the best indication of what David was going for. Now, so let's see David's intent, right? Let's see David's film, because we have different cuts of Blade Runner. We have different cuts of Apocalypse Now. They're still bringing out new cuts of Apocalypse Now. We have different cuts. We have the Renegade cut of Highlander 2. What's another cut of Suicide Squad? It's not going to hurt anyone. It's actually going to bring in more fans, right? And bring in more awareness and more viewers to you. So why not just have David have his cut? And let's complete the story. These chapters, right? The Superman chapter. Because Suicide Squad, the reason why it exists is because of Superman, right? That's what Amanda Waller says. We created this because Superman flew and then he fell down. So that's why they were created, to face another Superman. If it were to happen, if a Superman were to attack the Capitol. That's why Task Force X was. What if they succeed? Who knows? But that's the point, right? That's chapter 3 in this entire saga, right? If you think about it. So let's fix the chapters, and let's have our chapters at least. Whether this continues or whatnot, that's a different story. This story still needs to be completed with the Ayer cut. So let's complete the chapters. We're missing a chapter.
Exactly. If we're talking about restore the Snyderverse, it involves more than just Justice League 2 and 3. It involves that big missing piece, which is the Ayer cut, which is a huge part of the Snyderverse. All right, over to you, Tim. Now, what is the difference? What do you see as the difference between the Snyder cut and the Ayer cut as far as the circumstances behind them?
Well, as Melissa and Steve, excellently put, the circumstances and then what is industry habits. I would say, from here, aside from social camouflage, I would say basically the nuts and bolts of it, like the character from a narrative standpoint, how these characters interact. Basically, its timeline was altered. This was not edited by David Ayers. The editor of Suicide Squad credited. There's basically two competing cuts. There's an article in The Atlantic released around 2016, I believe, that covers kind of the troubled production. And essentially there is a gap between August of 2015 is when principal photography ended.
That's right.
And then there's a massive gap up until BVS. And then the sky fell. And then basically, as David mentioned, the first 40 minutes is cut. It's rearranged and the score is minimized more. It's more Guardians of the Galaxy, to use kind of an analogy. So stylistically, as Steve was putting, it's hard to look at the theatrical cut of Suicide Squad and believe this is written by the same guy who wrote Training Day.
Exactly.
And it's not the soulful drama that the Comic-Con trailer proposed. And so as a result, there was actually there's people's read the novelization, which from my understanding, it's the closest to what's, David actually filmed. The character interactions, it's been Harley and Joker, obviously are the big two. Jared Leto's performance, it's been massively reduced down. A more complex look at Harley's character, and that she's not a babe in the woods. She was always a bad kid. So showing her mercurial nature, her what can happen when a person with a kind of a bad kid meets someone else who's even badder. It kind of gives them a permission to go that extra mile. You get Deadshot in his parent, him being how he sees himself as a father to his child, but also his history. And, even Katana, there's more Diablo. He is the heart of the film. He is to Suicide Squad what Cyborg is to Justice League, because Diablo's character is the only one, as far as I can see, who is actually remorseful for what has happened. That's why he won't use his powers. It's he's that kind of, it's a really sweet, it's a heavy arc. It's really heavy with this thing, but it's and he lives towards the end, which just makes it even sweeter. That kind of full, like the slow march to redemption. So basically, in short, the differences being for sure, and the situation is the social camouflage used to justify basically mangling a director's film, because coming off of the reception of Batman v Superman, they figured they had the crowd's permission to, as the articles were saying, add more humor and lighten up the tone of these kind of films. And if they figure, if people don't like Zack's film, Batman v Superman, they will be okay with changing what happens in Suicide Squad. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the huge difference, I think, between compromising for a film and then what happened here with David and Zack's projects, in which they were completely it's almost like it was taken straight out of their hands. And it's like, well, we're going to work on this. We're going to have this trailer company, as it happened with David, and they're going to rework your film, and that'll be it. So huge difference as far as the overstepping that I think the studio did. And all three of you are awesome at answering very thoroughly on some of these questions. So I'm going to limit it a little bit here with this next question. As far as we continue on this rotation, Steve, pick one thing from what we know of the Ayer Cut so far, one thing in the Ayer Cut that you believe fits better in the Snyderverse compared to the Warner Brothers or Hamada-verse.
Well, I can say from my experience on set, it was after so my time on set was after the Midway attack, and it was in an airport where it was put as like a safety zone and also a pseudo quarantine zone and everything. So going there, you had everything from infantry, Navy SEALs, Midway City Police, again, quarantine zones and everything and whatnot, because it was to show the devastation of the attack. Right now, when you watch the film, it's pretty much a short montage of everything. And you get this ADR line from a bride saying, "Oh, my dress is messed up. Oh no, what do I do?" But we probably know where that ADR line came from. But the thing is now when my time on set, prior to filming and the camera, us infantry had to do a formation. And we had the two advisors there, which David had. And you know who they are, because every time you see Scott Eastwood, all the two special forces guys who were prominent next to Scott Eastwood, who got screen time, they were our advisors. And the one thing I'll never forget, I always say this anytime I get to talk about my experience, is that they made it apparent that David has huge respect for the military. And well, obviously so, because he was a Navy SEAL. He was a SEAL, or Air Force, or one of those.
He was Navy.
He was Navy. There we go. Sorry. He was Navy. And he wants everything right, everything to be precise. That goes along with David's style of showing realism, right? And that fits more with the Snyderverse, because that fits more with what Zach was going through, because Zach was doing modern myths. He was doing what if Superman were to actually come to our world, right? It's not a big deviation. It's just presenting the truth. And that's what happens here. You have all these fantastical characters, but it's presented in a way that there is realism to it. There is, what if we have a Killer Croc here? It's not a pseudo blend of fantasy and realism, sort of like what MCU does, right? They do it well. They blend it very well. But here it's like, no, we're going with a tone. We're going with the tone of, no, that's what if these characters were here in real life? What if we had a Joker here? And what if we had what if we had a Harley Quinn? What if we had a Captain Boo at a Flash in real life? And going with the style is very, hate to say the word all the time, but very gritty, very grimy, and very real. And the Midway attack, the days we spent there, that's to show the devastation of this attack. It's to show how serious it is. That's how it fits into what Zach was doing, into the whole Snyderverse timeline. And the thing is, like, at the time when everyone who are our buddies now, apparently all our blogger buddies now, saying, no, you got to do like Marvel. You got to do everything like Marvel. Well, these guys were doing the opposite. And it shows now, years later, yeah, you were onto something. So that it kind of shows that, no, if you stick with the path, it'll pay out in the end. You have to see the whole story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing here, is that at the time, all these talking heads were giving it their opinions. But if you just stuck with it, you will see everything would have paid off in the end. And it shows right now, even with the Zack Snyder's, even with the Snyder Cut, which I seem to find is Zack's most comic book movie, there is a sense of realism to it in an aspect. And it fits with all the films from MOS, BVS, Wonder Woman even, and with the Ayer Cut. It's to show that realism. It's to show that modern mythic interpretation of these characters. These aren't just funny book characters. These are actually living things, living beings They may have powers, but they feel. Diablo has a family. Diablo understands what his powers can do. Deadshot is the best, the greatest mercenary in the world, but he has a daughter where he cares about, and he have Harley Quinn, and the Joker and their twisted romance, but it does have but they still love each other. And Harley's fantasy, her ultimate fantasy, is living a normal life, right? What we saw in the film. So these are characters with real feelings, with real emotions. They're not just, comic book characters. They're real. If you want to take them seriously, that's how real do you want to take it? How real do you want to accept these characters? So that's up to you, to the viewers. I think with all of us, the serious tone of it pays more respect to these characters, because otherwise, why am I having a subscription to these stupid comic books if I don't take these characters seriously, right? Why do I care what relationships they have? Why do I care if Batman is this and this? Because, I'm invested in it. So for us, the seriousness of these characters, it helps with our connection to it. And I believe all of us watching and all of us who fought, they take that to heart. So it's up to the viewer. But for us, the seriousness matches how much we appreciate these characters. And that's what David and Zach was doing.
Yeah, they were absolutely carving their own path, and we were there for it. We were there to go along with the journey. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, the bloggers, reviewers weren't for it, and Warner Brothers kind of panicked a little bit. But we're here to help.
Some of them wrote
that.
A book. Did you hear about that?
Yes,
wow.
Tim, over to you. What's one thing from the Ayer Cut that we know of that you believe fits better in the Snyderverse as opposed to what we're getting now?
Amanda Waller. And going off of kind of what Steve was saying was like the realism of the thing. The thing is like how comics are viewed, particularly in the U.S. They're viewed because of its history since the 40s, and basically the congressional hearings and the censorship therein that flattened the industry and caused multiple publishers, studios to close. So comic books as a whole was like film, very diverse. You had romance, spy, pulp magazine, things like that. Like it's comic books roots are genre stories. So a lot of these characters that we have now, or how we know them now, they came from very, life imitating art out of the Great Depression, very serious stories dealing with crime, corrupt government, and all those things were stripped away. And then the Silver Age came a very safe, inoffensive style, right? Inoffensive to censors and maybe parent groups who don't understand. And that became the dominant interpretation of these characters, of how Superman should be. It's where Batman and Superman's no-kill code came from. It was Whitney Ellsworth's rules of engagement, so to speak, to keep censors. Like this is all, there's documents of it. You can find it, the documents for the Congress hearings on comics. It's all there. How this plays into Amanda Waller is someone like Amanda Waller, that kind of story, which looks at how the government operates, how they can, kind of the dark side of Big Brother. Besides, you want to see your daughter, you go do this thing for me. And it's like, there was an edge which made Viola Davis' performance so good in those trailers. Like you can see it in like the theatrical cut, but it's contained in like that kind of, getting people to do things against their self-interest is what I do best. That's a very real, very level, very like civilian level to like, 1%er, that kind of thing is very real. And how people interact and how they can manipulate each other negatively. And in some cases, positively. It's you can't really have like a really heavy Amanda Waller. Like she's in the Suicide Squad, but that kind of menace that she held, from what I've seen, it's missing. Again, everyone's kind of a caricature, like a flattened parody of themselves. My younger brother calls it like the exclamation point, like Batman with an exclamation point. It is like the most bare bones marketable interpretation of the character. Like Batman is cape and cowl and car. Like that's really what, oh, and dead parents. That's it. That is the most flattened version. Superman is smiles, cape, and sunshine. You know? And like it's very flat, you know. Harley is peppy, crazy girl. It's very, there's no nuance, right? And so Amanda Waller is like she's the human response to this. And like, and the thing is, she has points. She has things that make a lot of sense. Because I mean, the idea kind of pulling over from BVS is unchecked power, right? Bruce's whole thing with the 1% possibility, what if Superman goes rogue? But then conversely, who's keeping track of Bruce? Who put him in charge? Who put him in charge to dictate who lives and who dies with his proxy brandings? Like who's keeping him in check? And then hop over to the world, you know, Amanda Waller coming out of that SUV, walking past that t-shirt stand. And there's the shirts, Superman never forget. And she just kind of smiled like, yeah, you're dead. And it kept moving, you know. It's a good way to explore the conversation about power. And then conversely, we can talk about it in our own lives, from, you know, neighborhoods to local government to federal government to international government. Who's watching the Watchmen? Who watches who? How do we hold each other accountable? And then other arms and things like that. It's really fertile. It's serious. And this isn't a PG-13. They were scared of what David was doing in a PG-13 movie. Okay, like you don't have to have rated R. Like I think the Pavlovian response is rated R is like equals gore. Like rated R could just mean very mature topics, very nuanced topics, stuff that you got to like kind of think about. You know, kind of like a simple idea is like, is GTA more mature storytelling than Zelda Ocarina of Time?
No, it's not. No.
So that kind of idea, you know, it's like, what is the deal, you know? So I think Amanda Waller, she works best in the Snyder universe with that serious tone and exploring nuanced topics, not in a graphic or gratuitous way, but just in a sincere, honest kind of approach. And, you know, the irony being, in an attempt to make the theatrical cut Studio Squad more Marvel-like, that tells me, one, the studio execs don't really know Marvel's history. If you've read Days of Future Past, the comic, if you read Dark Phoenix, the comic book, these are very serious stories, really serious, like, you know, heartfelt kind of deals by Chris Claremont. And so it's, again, Marvel with an exclamation point, you know, the brand. So, yeah, Amanda Waller is the biggest. Like, for me, like, off the top of my head, she works better in the universe Ayer and Snyder were working more so than in Hamada's kitchen door.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the wall properly as she was in that Comic-Con trailer. It's going to be awesome. And Melissa, what is one thing that they've revealed in the Ayer Cut so far that you think fits better in the Snyderverse than what they're currently doing?
I think for me, after what they said, I think that the depth being gone takes away the relatability. The audience, I think that the darkness gives it more room for the passion to come out as well. And you're missing that whole yin yang, if you will. Like, it just is very flat. Like, it's, I don't recall where I read it, but something about they wanted it to have the tone of Deadpool, which I don't think it, in my opinion, completely actually worked the way that they wanted it to. But just, for example, watching the extended cut versus the studio squad, there's just the story and the relatability just grows. Like, there's a huge amount of depth that's in the extended cut that's not in the original. So I think that if we're only going to get a lot more of that, and if you think about how so many people have latched onto the characters just from the stories in the comic books and also the movies already, I think that will just greatly increase. So I think it just fits. Like, it's more real. it's more relatable.
Yeah, it goes very much also to what Steve was saying with the having real characters. What you were saying, Melissa, you relate to these characters more than you would something like on the competitor side.
And the funny thing, the funny thing is that, you know, before, now we can go back to cons, but prior, like going to all these Comic Cons, Jared Leto's Joker was very popular amongst cosplayers from what I saw, right? And he also Margot's Harley Quinn. But then again, Harley Quinn is always popular, but the costuming of these two specifically, I saw tons of Jared Leto Joker. So it shows that there is an audience connection to it, right? And
Right.
so these characters, though, even though in this film, and these characters, they do sell well and everything as such. But you know, the unfortunate part about what happens to David is that he fell victim, like his film fell victim to trends. You know, it's it's just capitalizing on the trend of Deadpool because it was because it did huge money, capitalizing on the trend of like Guardians of the Galaxy and everything. And to bring up another example, if you look at Daredevil, the Ben's theatrical cut, if you buy the director's cut, even the studio, the executive even tells you why they made those decisions is to capitalize on Ben and Jennifer's popularity at the time. So they focus more on the relationship aspect. But if you look at the director's cut, it's totally different. It fits much better. It's a new edit, and there's more scenes. There's more weight and seriousness added to it. But they give these reasons, and unfortunately, you know, as the captain, our buddy Robert Meyer Burnett, I don't know if he's our buddy, but he, you know, it's not show friends, it's show business. Sometimes you gotta capitalize on a trend to go with the business side, which is, you know, it's not always great when you're talking about art, but we are talking with other people's money. But then again, we need to find a marriage of both, right? And how do we do that? But that's also why we have, you know, we have all these avenues to have different viewings, different ways of watching what's there, right? Different director cuts, alternate cuts, and everything like that. So that falls in line. It's like, okay, we didn't see it the first time, but we can have other ways of seeing it the next time. But understand, like, unfortunately, these things happen. But then again, you know, it's like you put in all the demand, and then you see it, and you can double dip it, right? you can get more out of it if you bring it out. So
yeah, money to be made for sure.
Unfortunate circumstances. That's the main problem.
Right. Exactly. Well, let's say if you're talking for this next topic, let's say you're talking to someone who isn't following the Ayer Cut or the Snyder Cut movement as much as, you know, any one of us here. Let's say they're asking, you know, well, what's the difference between the Suicide Squad theatrical and the Ayer Cut? Like, what are we really seeing as the difference? So I want to hear like your pitch from each of you. Tim, what would you say to someone? Then we'll go to Melissa and then Steve as to what you see. What's the difference between the theatrical and the Ayer Cut?
No pop music, more seriousness. Right off the gate. No weird jump cuts. Like, it feels like, honestly, I would tell someone, you like Training Day? Remember Training Day? It's going to feel like Training Day. Obviously, different directions. I was like, the same guy who wrote Training Day, same guy who's directed Suicide Squad wrote. He's like, it's going to feel like that. It's like the film you just saw ain't even going to feel the same. Music's different. You know what I'm saying? More Carol, just like more Jokers, more. Enchantress does not. The whole third act is different. Tell them that the whole third act, like that last third of the movie, it's not even the same. It's not even the same. It's not even there. I was like, there's characters who live in the end who don't die. It's got a swagger. That's what I like about David Ayer's film. Like, you can tell he's from the barrio. You know what I mean? Like, his film's got a vibe to him. Just like, I like it. It's like, you know, it's like known people that have that vibe. And just like, yeah, it's like, it feels kind of homey in a way, you know. That would be the big thing. It's just like, yeah, just like it don't feel like a music video. Like, it's like it is a different film. It is like, by definition, this is a different film, you know, different circumstances and such. So that's why I would sell them on, just like this is a different film entirely.
How about you, Melissa? What would you sell them on as the difference between the two versions?
Just a huge amount of the story being missing. So I think the Ayer Cut's going to tell much more of the story. the way that the director intended it to, and length, like just, at least 40. I think David said like the first 40 minutes, like, and I think also like the way that they made it, there's so many possibilities to make stories that aren't based off of the original work. So in some ways, I think you're just going to see David's work the way it was intended to be, and a lot of the characters too.
Yeah, and that'll be just by simply seeing all that extra chunk of not even just the 40 minutes, but who knows what else we're missing out of this. That, yeah, you're right. Exactly. We're going to get a lot of that story that's going to be huge and a big impact for the film itself. And how about you, Steve?
I think the best way that I would describe it is like, listen, guys, I got this movie for you. That's this very hardcore, gritty street movie. That's a mix of Heat, Dirty Dozen, even some Menace to Society. It's really cool. They got this group of like gang coming together to stop this threat, going into the city and stopping it. Now, it's action-packed. You got these messed up characters, and also it's got this high drama. It's the most wildest thing we've ever seen. It's got, as my man Tim said, it's got swag, it's got attitude. But now, doesn't that sound pretty cool, right? So what's this movie?
Yeah.
Well, it's this movie, but it's got Joker, it's got Harley Quinn, it's got Killer Croc, it's got Captain Boomerang, and it's got Rick Flag in it. Those are the guys in this movie. It's like, what? Yeah, it's that. It's attitude, it's badass, it's fucking wicked. It's hardcore. It's a hardcore action army street level film with comic book characters. Have you ever seen anything like that? Have you ever seen something like that? Probably not. Not many have seen something like that. That's Suicide Squad. That's the Ayer Cut.
Put it in my veins.
Yeah, can we see it now? After all three pitches, I want to see it now. All your reasons.
Hopefully, we can see it now.
Yeah. Oh man.
So
as soon as possible.
Why would you say we have to do something about the Ayer Cut? Why would you think that this is important for not just the Snyderverse, but maybe for filmmaking? Let's start off with Melissa, head on over to Steve, and then Tim.
For me, it comes down to a few main things. First is creative freedom. I think going forward, I think it's hard for directors and cast and crew and all these people to put all of their work and time and money and their livelihoods into creating such a story and then have it completely changed into a music video, for example, or like a wannabe music video-ish vibe, which was never intended. Also the characters, like the actors, for example, I think David and Jared Leto really took a lot of heat for the way that things were edited and people understood from that, as opposed to how things really were intended and created. So, for example, the relationship between Harley and Joker is going to be completely different. And then everybody's going to have a completely different perspective than they've had the last 5 years. And all these other stories that have branched off from the way that perspective was. It's going to create like a whole new part of the multiverse, if you will.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible
that would fit
how
in.
Yeah, some heavy editing will change up the characters so much, like Harley and Jokers. And you're right, we're going to get a very different perspective on those in the Ayer Cut, I think, than what we got in the theatrical. Over to you, Steve.
For me, I have 2 points of view. Like the first point of view is that, yeah, I do work in this industry. I am an actor, and I did spend time on set. I did, as same old record. But it's like you got to keep mentioning that because it is hard work making a movie. It's sometimes filming a movie may take 5 months, but those are long hours in a day in those 5 months. And sometimes you're working 7 days a week, right? You got a lot of people, putting their time and effort, and you got a lot of people like making something. And we don't want to see, as I said, like anyone that creates anything, even if you do a vlog or even if you draw or do something, or even if you make your own, if you create anything, you want people to see what you've made, right? Unless you're Prince, all right, rest in peace. Then it's like, no, you don't get to see anything at all. You don't get to listen to anything. But I love Prince. But most of us want people to see our work, right? Want to see our hard work, and that's the same thing. Like even from the gaffers that rig the lights and everything like that. Like this is our hard work on screen, and so that as a personal aspect is we want to see. I understand decisions are made on a business perspective, but you do get second chances, and there are many films that have different versions of them out. What's wrong with having another version of Suicide Squad? Now, as speaking from the fan perspective, from this community perspective, as I said before, this completes. Let's just take these 5 films as one component to the Superman story, one component to the Snyderverse. This is the Ayer Cut, as I said, is the full completion of the Snyderverse so far. Man of Steel, BVS, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Snyder Cut. Those 5 chapters, those 5 Superman chapters. We're missing one chapter, one complete chapter. We have something of it, but not the complete chapter, right? To fill everything in. So that's the importance of the Ayer Cut when it comes to this community, when it comes to what Zach and David and Deborah and everything were planning all these way back in probably 2010, right? Because pre-production planning stuff out happens way before, right? So who knows how long they planned it. So to complete the entire chapter for us as a community, so we can watch these films, watch these chapters over and over again, Ayer Cut is the final chapter to complete. So that's the importance for us. And when we see David's work, it's like, it's just validation for David. It's like, yeah, you were onto something, and you were onto something good. And it's just like, yeah, it's just that final feel-good moment for David. It's like, yeah, what I've been saying is true. What I've been saying all these years, like what my intention was right all along. So as a personal win for David as well. So that's 2 sides of it, and both are important. But I think the more community side, the community side for RTSC, for Release the Ayer Cut, for this entire Snyderverse movement, that's more important for us, speaking to our audience, and that let's complete this chapter.
Mm-hmm. Great reason. And Tim, why do we need to do something about the Release the Ayer Cut?
There's the thought that in certain things, if it's always been the way it's been, why bother changing? You know what I mean? Well, this is what always happens, so why bother changing? It's like, well, just because it's always been, some things have been the way they are, doesn't mean that they should stay that way. You know what I mean? If an area is known for robberies, then should we not try to curtail robberies? If Hollywood is known for very uncreative people in positions of power trying to make creative decisions on things they don't understand, should we not try to change that even a little? So, David getting his chance to see his film is like, well, and he was like, well, this happens in Hollywood a lot. Well, so the director's cut. You know what I mean? It's like, if someone has a naysayer about it, it's like, why are they even talking about the topic? All right, out of this topic we got here, it's like, it's been a chain effect from, honestly, from BVS to Suicide Squad, then to Justice League. And, then the campaign began, then the charitable wing kind of came after being suggested by Fiona. And in the Ayer Cut also has a charitable component, the Dogs for Veterans. You know what I mean? Like, which is an important thing. Obviously, veterans and military being close to David's heart as well. And so, there's a ricocheting effect of like supporting the creative arts, but also giving back in some facet of the community. And like AFSP and the Veterans Dogs, and those are like the more prominent things, but there's also been other events. Lena Deep had her supplies for mothers and school kids live in South America or Brazil. And there's other things, feeding the homeless with the subway. It's these creative endeavors that have emboldened us, kind of like, storytelling. Storytelling is a way to convey truth in a very comfortable atmosphere, I feel. So why we need to do this, because one, we're in a particular place and time where the audience can have a say. You know what I mean? Like, it isn't just some plastic corporate line of we listen to our audience, even though like the situation, the structure is set up where the audience can't really speak to the studio without not going. It's like where community does matter. You can, if you gather enough people, make a statement, and they have to listen. We are the demand in the supply chain. You know what I mean? And that is part of business. It's like, and the interesting thing about that is, like, they say in business, like, it's not emotional, it's just business. But anyone that studied marketing realizes marketing in business is, in essence, weaponizing emotional content. If I can get you to emotionally connect, either to love this person, you will see the film, or if you really hate this character, you will see it to see them get beat up. That's what pro wrestling does. A lot of things that you weaponize that. How many people went into Endgame wanting to see Thanos get beat? That's emotional content. Emotional content fuels business model. That's just, it's how it's always been. And what's interesting, that Deadpool's an interesting component because, like Ayers mentioned, WB being like, the scared copycats that they tend to be, they wanted to copy Deadpool. The irony being is, like, Deadpool was a film. Everyone remembers that leak that came in the night after 2014 Comic-Con. That was an older test footage from the 2010. What the directors did, they were trying to work on Deadpool for a while. And so, like, they had plans and they just didn't. It was in limbo. And then this came out, and then fan support came for an unfilmed film. This film had no script. There was no director of photography. You just had Ryan Reynolds desperately trying to make this happen. And then through fan support and like them seeing that intensity bolstered them to say, okay, let's give Deadpool a shot. Ayer Cut is like the leaked test footage that can galvanize people. It's like the second hand of that punch. It's that right hook after coming after the, Zack's Justice League. So this can actually help jumpstart a film that is not filmed to be greenlit, particularly after, like, the Discovery merger. There is precedent, massive comic book precedent, that you can, with fan support, get a film that is not filmed with no script to be filmed. And we're seeing it with Deadpool. If it was not possible, we wouldn't be hearing about Deadpool appearing in the Marvel Universe. But it is because supply and demand is real. Without no supply, without no demand, there is no, there's no supply. The supply is useless. So this is why, us showing, we demand this. We're willing to pay. We know business. We're not just, we're not naive enough to think that they're just doing it like out of the kindness of our heart. We're engaging in business just as much, and we know the game. We very much know the game now. So, and history's already bared us out. All that's really in our way is ego. And as we've seen with Zack Snyder's Justice League, with AT&T that is getting ready to sell off WB, with the people that were against us, we were able to show our demand was worth the supply. And then came Zack Snyder's Justice League. Same thing with the Ayer Cut. We just have to use the blueprints there. And through that, we gain more support now, like the end of 300. All right. We got more people. Now the Greeks are here. Now it's growing. You know what I mean? And we just have to do stay the course, be consistent, be creative. And, it will happen. It will happen. The only way it guarantees it doesn't happen is if we do nothing. That is guaranteed, surefire, 100% way it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you set up that segue perfectly, because we're going to show demand for the Ayer Cut on August 5th. And that is for a this is what we're going to use to really show what we can do to help release the Ayer Cut. So there's this little event that everyone's been, in case you missed it, in case you haven't been on Twitter in 3 weeks, August 5th is a huge event. And why don't we tell them what we're going to do on August 5th? Started off with Steve.
Pretty much how we got the Snyder Cut. We all got to come together, as the song says, and unite. Like, forget hashtags and slogans and everything. Actually do what's said. Do the definition of the word. Unite. All of us come together and tweet out, release the Ayer Cut. We all have different timelines, different start times to all where we are in wherever part of the world you're in. But August 5th, that's the big day. We all got to show up. You know, we can always say it's like, yeah, I do this, but we all got to show up that one day. You show up one day, right? And you can make a lot. You can do, as long as you show up. They always say, you know, it's like, if anything, especially like just talk to me or anything like that about like working in this industry, is that anything can happen when you come on set, but you got to show up. And when you show up, anything can happen. So when you show up, a lot can happen. A lot happened on November 7th, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most of us have a physical copy of what happened that day. So you got to show up. You know, that's the end of the. There's nothing more to add other than that. Show up August the 5th. Do your part. And who knows? Maybe we'll get more of it. Maybe we'll get more of it.
Yeah, it sounds like something is happening that day, and that day will be significant. I've got a thick skull. I need to hear it 3 times. I don't care. Tim, what do we need to do on August 5th?
As Steve said, show up, but also have fun. Like November is like 17th, 2019 was a party. It was a day-long global party. And it's like there was a week-long ramp up to that of like pictures and stills, and each day had a different character, and it's that similar positivity now. Like it's like, and I think, you know, it was, as we were kind of talking earlier off, it was like, I think everyone's had a chance to get their second wind after like getting, you know, after the Snyder Cut was released, and now it's like, yeah, we was like, no, let's get this thing. Make fan art, talk to people, share gifts. It's like just have a ball, have a party, make pictures, make music. It's like share it that day. It's a celebration, like that Rick James skit. You know, it's like it's a great party time. You know what I mean? And it's like David's aware of it, the cast is aware of it. Jared Leto was on there and said he would go in to do reshoots for the Ayer Cut. Like he's like Jai Courtney. Jai Courtney's like he's all in. He don't care. He's all in. And like the cast wants this. You know what I mean? And it's like it's gonna be a good time. Have fun doing this. It's like, you know, it's not so much like a series of laborers, but it's just like we're having fun. We're getting some cool and now we have predictive results because we did it with arguably a bigger film and a harder film to finish. The Ayer Cut is not hard to finish. Like Ayer said himself, it is not hard to finish. Just a tiny bit of VFX, maybe one scene to pick up. But it's like, this is going to be a party. Like, have fun, make some cool stuff, draw some stuff, chat on the timeline, share it with your friend, share it on Instagram also. You know, like make it ricochet outside of Twitter. Because once we trend worldwide, the trades will pick it up. That was the trick with November 17, 2019. Once it got to like past 1 million, like Twitter has no choice but to show it on their news line. They can't squash it. Everyone sees it. And then the trades pick it up. See, that's like the after effect. Like it isn't just an arbitrary number. We have to hit bigger than we ever have. And all of us globally, not just the US or the UK, it's like India, you know, South America, you know, all the Russia, Japan, like all the Africa, like it's the unified effect. You know, Malaysia going through the day, it's going to really pay off. And we're going to see, we already got an article with Den of Geeks. They're seeing it. More people are talking about it. They're more open. It's now being more known. This is going to be a party. And the sweetest like piece of cake from the party will be like those articles talking about fans really want David Ayer's director's cut of Suicide. Them Snyder folks are back. They're back again, you know?
Those cultists are back. Oh no. But Tim is right. It's like we have so many TikTok, right? TikTok videos pick up so much. One guy on a skateboard got a whole oceanic spray in sponsorship. So as Tim said, you know, treat it as a fun day. Treat it as if you're going to a con. You know, you dress up, you have fun, you use all your platforms, Facebook, Instagram, you know, Vero even, but TikTok. Make your, you know, dress up, make your videos, do scenes, do something, like have that engagement and have, you know, treat it as like a con day, as if you're going to a con and you're having fun the whole day and you're tweeting out. And as Tim said, it's like they got no choice but to pick it up. The more noise you make, people hear and they'll start talking about it because they want to be in on the fun too. They want to join the party. You know, you want to get invited to the biggest party. Well, you know, join in, right? Line up.
Absolutely. And tell them, Melissa, what do we need to do on August 5th?
Join in the fun, join the community, support the cause, support the cast and crew, and have fun. You know?
Perfect. Hashtag release the Ayer Cut.
Release the Ayer Cut.
For every response to like, what are you having for lunch? Oh, this hashtag release the Ayer Cut. Just put it in there. Everything you do, put it in there. Let's close out with something that I think we did this for the Snyder Cut. So we're going to do this for this. And hopefully this follows a trend and we get this eventually. Which character or what part of the Ayer Cut are you most excited to see? Start off with Tim, Melissa, and then we'll close out with Steve.
Oh man, it's like
either character you think would benefit most from Ayer Cut or the one part of the Ayer Cut that you're most excited for.
Yeah, Joker would benefit the most, like emphatically. And then Katana I'm most interested in because there's more of her. Katana and Diablo, but Joker would absolutely be. This is like it's entirely vindication. Entirely like people like the Joker at the end of in the Nightmare universe. Like he's playing that same guy in the Ayer Cut. It's the same guy. You know, I would want to know where he got that giant burnt scar across his face. It's like absolutely gonna benefit. And there's like the soulful element with Katana at the end. It's like, you know, with the sword, and it's like we may see her family, what happened. It's like killer sword. Like, how cool is that? And Karen Fukuhara, she's in The Boys, right? So now she's got like more love. So it's like that audience is gonna come over and like, oh, she's in there. There's more of it. Yeah. So yeah, Joker and Katana.
Perfect. And Melissa, how about you?
I'd say Joker and Harley relationship. Also, there's so much Katana, Killer Croc. I mean, so much story arc. For sure.
Awesome. And Steve, go ahead and take us home. What's the one thing you're most looking forward to, or a character you think would benefit?
Okay, so one thing I'm most looking forward to, one character I'm looking most forward to is Diablo, because as Tim said, David has a connection to the East Los Chicano culture. Now think about this, right? The heart and soul of the film is Diablo. You know, a Chicano character and, you know, an ethnic character in this whole thing, the heart and soul, just like the Snyder Cut. Yep. Cyborg is the heart and soul of it. A black character that's not a supporting character. A black character as the heart and soul, the lead in a big comic book motion picture, which is Justice League, the first one. Let's think about that, right? We always talk about progression. Well, you have it. Now you took it away, but now we can get it back. But what I am mostly, personal level, what I'm looking forward to see is my friends, right? It's all my friends. I want to see Gavin say his one line. I want to see I have one of my friends, they came up to me, it's like, Steve, man, I've been with Will Smith all day. I'm part of the task force where he's in. And then when I see the movie, he's not there anymore. Like, what? It's like, you got edited out? Like, how can you be edited out? It's like, I don't know, bro. Like, I was there with him all day, shooting at all these other guys, like helping with Will Smith. Like, I was basically his right hand. And I can't see myself. I want to see him. You may find a speck of me walking by, but I want to see my friends. I want to see all the people who worked on the film. So as a personal, I want to see like my friend who was a stunt double for Rick Flag, Joel Kinnaman. I want to see what more stuff he did, all the stunts he did. So as a personal level, that's what I'm looking forward to. I want to see all of my friends and peers for all their hard work. And I want to see Diablo because, you know, as I said, we're all talking about wokeness and progression and all this. Zach and David did it.
Mhm.
So release the Ayer Cut because they did it way before you talked about it, bro.
Well said.
So rad.
That's fantastic, everyone. This has been a very fun roundtable to do for Release the Ayer Cut. Don't forget, once again, on August 5th, Release the Ayer Cut. Head on over to the RT Snyder Cut account in case you haven't already. They have the graphic up on there based on different parts of the world that you're at. And make sure to show up. If you need a tweet scheduler, there's a bunch out there. Hootsuite is a great one. But in case you're working that day, there are ways to make sure that you're still there, even if you're working. It'll send out some tweets for you. But otherwise, if you have a few minutes that day throughout the day after that time zone on August 5th, hashtag Release the Ayer Cut. That's the important part. You can tag Discovery if you'd like, AT&T, but make sure to always include hashtag Release the Ayer Cut. That's what we're going to push on August 5th. So Melissa, Steve, Tim, it has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to host today's roundtable. So I want to thank all of you for your time and for coming out for this very special roundtable that will hopefully get more people behind Release the Ayer Cut on August 5th. So thank you again.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
For having us.
And to all of you watching on the other side, thank you once again for tuning in to this roundtable. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet to the RT Snyder Cut YouTube channel right here. But otherwise, we'll see you on August 5th. Thanks, everyone.